Student clicked on the wrong file from his flash drive during his presentation. What funny embarrassing things have you seen during a presentation? I had a friend who was very shy. She started a video presentation. When some softcore piece started, she screamed, turned it off and started crying. I found out later it was intentional. She just hadn't finished her presentation and needed a way out. It worked too, since the teacher let her do it later. What the little frick? I can't believe I didn't think of that. This happened to my mom because she borrowed my dad's flash drive, and he had a bunch of pee on it apparently. During a presentation in nursing school, in front of about 75 people, pee started popping up. My mom was crying when she got home. I felt bad. That was probably not the best week for your dad either. Guy in my class was giving a presentation and there was a video playing. It was some boring presentation about transistors, but halfway through it there suddenly popped up a picture of Arnold Schwarzenegger posing nude with his hips pushed outwards and his dong was censored by a machine gun. The guy had no idea what was going on. Also at the end of the presentation there was a samurai who stabbed himself repeatedly in the stomach. That was one heck of a presentation. And this is why you always watch videos before you include a link, boys and girls. I was in a car accident on the way to giving a presentation in class. I felt good enough to decline an ambulance ride and I didn't want to deal with rescheduling the presentation, but my head didn't feel quite right. Fast forward an hour, I'm in the middle of my speech in front of the class when I start leaking brain juice out of my nose. It literally filled my cupped hands with clear fluid and I just stood there not knowing what to do before stammering I had an accident. I'll never forget the looks of horror. I heard stories like this 1,000 times. People underestimate the long-term damage from car accidents. My cousin got rear-ended but told the cop he felt fine. About a few weeks later the most excruciating back and neck pain seized him. He's a big fit guy too. I took a specialized programming class in college with only 7 people in it. There was this girl in the class who was kind of cute, but never bathed. For context, she wore a motion capture suit that smelled so bad afterwards. It was dry cleaned twice and eventually had to be thrown out. Anyways, final project presentation day comes and when it gets to her turn she opens this PowerPoint about World of Warcraft. Our class has nothing to do with WoW. She then delivers an hour-long presentation about how she is addicted to WoW and she didn't have time to do any schoolwork, but oddly had time to make this presentation. She cried through the whole things. Our prof had no idea what to do. After she sat down, she just cried in the back while everyone else did their projects. One time in history class during high school we were reading as a class. When my turn came up I pronounced Jesus and his Gentiles as Jesus and his genitals. I read it as Jesus and his genitals twice. I had a friend in high school that was finishing up an English paper during a study hall, the period before it was due. He finished it up and left to go to the bathroom, then came back and printed it out. Unbeknownst to him, this other guy changed the final sentence of the paper while he was in the bathroom. The final sentence ended up being something like, "And that's why I like riding backdoors," or "sticking my dong in tight buttholes." The teacher commented on it saying he had one heck of a clincher in his paper. I had a friend add "plus I like little boys" to the end of a sentence in the middle of my economics paper. It came back circled in red with no other comment. Sadly I was not present in the class when it happened, but a few of my friends as well as the poor victim told me. The victim being my friend who is gay and went to show a presentation in front of the class. No idea the size as I wasn't in this class. He tells his work partner the video is in some folder. Guy clicks wrong folder and bam, hardcore gay pee starts playing. I still do not understand why people need pee on their USB external. At least lock the folder or something. I find camouflaging the P folder with a name like school group project is effective. One day in my middle school biology class, a girl was doing a presentation about single-celled organisms, or single-celled orgasms as she called them. She screwed that up 3 or 4 times and it was increasingly funny each time. Our teacher was laughing too, so there was no stopping it, and the presenter was so embarrassed that after a few times, we'd know when she was approaching the word on her note cards because she would take a pause to try her hardest to not say orgasm again. We did PowerPoints for a class once and we had to hook our own laptops up because the room had a portable projector but no computer. This one guy who rarely bathed and was usually lecherous plugged his in, and his desktop was an anime pic of a naked purple-haired girl who looked pretty underaged, getting tentacle debauched. Totally unfazed, he took his sweet time finding the right folder while giving the ladies look. He later was expelled for having hidden a camera in the shower room in his dorm and recording girls in there. Guy in my class was about to give a presentation, but the professor noticed that he had an emulated Contra on the flash drive. Our professor then proceeded to stop him, get on the computer, and then play Contra in front of the whole class. Started doing IT in the final year of school and were getting a presentation about how to change the host's file on our computer. Our teacher was a particularly old-fashioned anal teacher who used to yell at us for no reason and generally keep the entire class in pin-drop silence. So he opens his computer, yells at a kid telling him his life is a failure and he's not going to get into university, and to embarrass him makes him come to the front to demonstrate where to find the host's file. He goes up and clicks a folder on the teacher's comp called System Files. Inside are pictures of a stag night he attended, with the first picture being him in a naughty nurse's outfit made out of 100% leather with a plastic glory hole in one hand and chocolate sauce in the other. TLDR. Strict teacher tries to embarrass student. Ends up showing pictures of himself in drag. Anal meaning super strict rather than having anything to do with one's bottom. Gotta love those old-fashioned anal teachers. I took a class in philosophy wherein each student had to give a 15-minute presentation at the start of the 2-hour class on the reading prior at least once. Having done all the readings up to that point and understanding their difficulty of presentation as being moderately low and having been overly confident in my speech ability, I put off doing the reading or preparing the presentation until roughly 2 hours before the actual time to hit the podium in front of a class of about 100. The moment I opened my book to start the reading, I realized it was easily the toughest yet conceptually to explain, as it was fairly nuanced, and I began to panic. Having scrabbled together what I thought would be a decent presentation, I slinked off to class and got in behind the podium. About 3 minutes in, I realized I didn't know what the frick I was talking about, and I could see the confused looks on my classmates. Cue sweaty palms, balls full on panic mode. My professor stood up and started talking to me, but her voice started to sound like the adults' teachers from Charlie Brown. The room began to spin and I blacked out. I woke up with about 7 people standing over me. Apparently, I was speaking complete indescribable gibberish for about 30 seconds. I understood what I was saying in my head, but no one else did, because I wasn't speaking words, and it took my professor standing up and stopping the class before they would stop me from my continuing mouth dribble. When I blacked out, I faceplanted into the front of the podium and whiplashed back down with crumpled knees. No idea what caused it. TLDR. I blacked out while giving a presentation. Back in grade 8, our class had to do speeches on various topics. Pretty boring. Standard stuff. This one kid gets up there to do his speech and his opening line is, "What's long, hard, and full of semen, if you guessed a submarine, you're right." The teacher wasn't really even paying attention until she heard that gem come out of his mouth. In middle school, a kid was telling a story about how he had encountered a man of war while swimming. He said, "And then I saw this really long testicle floating on the top of the water." Everyone, even my hot as heck science teacher, started laughing. He really didn't know they were called tentacles, which to me was even more funny. My friend in a very, very Catholic school was to give a presentation on the Bible. He then went on to talk about the Old Testicle and the New Testicle. A girl was doing a presentation on Holodomor, Ukrainian famine in the 1930s. She had an infographic that she had downloaded from somewhere, but she had not read the entire graphic. It turns out that she got the graphic from an anti-Semitic website, and the graphic was basically blaming the famine on Jews. It just had a couple of facts that she noticed and wanted in the presentation, and she didn't bother to read the rest. The professor was Jewish, so he flipped out. She left the room in tears once he was done screaming at her. I didn't see her again. I don't think she passed. Arm gets ripped off, stands up, and that's why you always read the entire infographic. In my aircraft performance class, a kid was giving a presentation of some early jet and mentioning how the ejector seat would malfunction and activate when it wasn't supposed to, but his words came out. The ejaculation seat had a problem of going off prematurely. Don't laugh, it's a real problem that affects thousands of planes every year. This girl in my class about 2 years ago was doing a presentation, and when she put in her USB drive, it opened the folder and she had everything there, including pictures of herself. The entire lecture hall of about 150 students saw naked pictures of her. She didn't do the presentation and ran out of the class. Dang. Judging by the frequency of this happening, I'm beginning to think this may be an excellent strategy for getting out of a presentation. Sitting in a Comp C class a number of years ago in college. We are talking lecture here with a 100+ kids. Professor gets up to start class and always presents via PowerPoint from his laptop. So the professor can't get his laptop to boot or whatever and is honestly about to cancel class when this Melvin steps up and says, "I have the slides downloaded. You can present from my laptop." Obviously the whole class groans, but whatever. Kid brings his machine forward with the presentation already open, connects to the projector and hands it over to the professor. Rest of class goes fine and the prof finishes up and closes PowerPoint. At this point we are now looking at this poor guy's desktop 20 feet tall on the screen in front of everybody. Remember, this is Comp C. Desktop is this weird hentai mixed with furry picture of 2 cat women fricking, and of course one of them has a part that women aren't supposed to have. The audible gasps, OS% and $, and cries of WTF go out from the whole class. Prof just looks at it, goes on and closes the lid. Should probably mention this prof is like 72. Poor kid had to make the walk of shame up to the front to claim his laptop. This was like sophomore year too. We never let him live it down. In the end he was pretty good about it and realized the only thing you could do is just laugh. LR kid loans laptop to professor with hentai desktop. I will never understand why people want any type of P as their wallpaper, especially if it's on a computer you use in public. Sure, I have 2D anime chicks for my wallpapers. Nothing wrong with that, but I'm not about to have images of them getting drilled for anyone who might be around to see them. For our first speech in my com class, we had to do a PowerPoint over ourselves. This guy in my class just wasn't right. Physically he was normal enough, but it just seemed like something wasn't clicking up there. That day, I found out why. In his presentation he told us a story. He was 3 years old, walking with his dad in a parking lot. A truck backed up and ran him over. Apparently, the guy looks back at his dad, apologizes for hitting his dog, and drives off. The absurdity of it all, that some guy confused a toddler with a pet, just got to me. I'm a nervous laugher. I realized people heard a chuckle from me, and so I just started going harder. I couldn't stop. The guy had to stop his presentation. I had to go in the hall to stop crying laughing. It was just so awkwardly funny and tragic. I didn't know how to feel at the time. I still feel terrible for the kid though. Sorry I hit your dog. Lost it. Not really a presentation, but your story reminded me of a time I was working at a school and the school just got smart boards and projectors. One of the teachers goes to another teacher that had it installed in his class and asks if she can bring her grade 3 class in the next period to watch a movie. He says sure and goes to get his laptop and sets it up. So the teacher brings in her class and they all sit down and he sticks in the DVD. Right then Windows Media Player opens up and goes directly to library, and they're all over this giant smartboard are pictures from all the different porns he had been watching on the laptop. And not soft stuff either, there were close-ups of riding backdoors and bondage and all that kind of stuff. Best part was it was a school-issued laptop. So the class is going nuts and they can't figure out how to get it off the screen. Eventually they do and he obviously has to go let the principal know what happened. The principal issues a letter for the kids to take home stating that it was just pictures of girls in bikinis. The next day they wait for the inevitable calls from concerned parents, but not a single one called. After the presentation I have to send the file and write up to my instructor. I go to send an email and click attach. And up pops the file selector. It opens to the last location I attached from, which was a directory I had buried because it was full of obscene pictures of myself. Dang you thumbnail previews. At least I looked good. In my grade 9 math class, a kid in my class got pantsed while standing up to ask a question to the teacher. I believe it was to ask if he could go to the bathroom. The kid who did the pantsing accidentally pulled the kid's underwear down as well. flopping his dong out in front of the entire class. The funniest part was he was standing right beside a girl when it happened and she let out a loud shriek when she turned around to find his dong inches from her face. High school was brutal. Pantsed. At my college you have to do a senior project and present it to a bunch of your friends, faculty members, and family, if they come. This kid was giving his presentation to a sizable group that included his parents. When he pulled up his computer to give the presentation, he had forgotten to exit out of the window he had used to watch some gay pee prior to the presentation. He quickly exits the window, but the sound glitches and keeps playing on his computer, which promptly freezes up. After a moment, he squares his shoulders and starts to give his presentation like a boss to the sounds of guys doing it in the background. TLDR. Guys give senior project presentation with gay pee playing in the background. Back in high school speech class we were supposed to give a humorous speech, and I freaking killed it. Everyone was laughing uproariously, and I was ready to double down on a career in comedy, until I realized my jeans had been unzipped and displaying my tighty whities the whole dang time. I was not able to play it off as part of the act, unfortunately. Unless you started flipping tables and really dropped it at the end, I'd say the majority of people would be unable to take such a thing seriously and would have assumed it was part of the act nonetheless. Left my computer open in the library while finishing a presentation before class. Left it closed, with no password. I'm an idiot. To go to the bathroom. Came back to the library to pick up the computer. Walked into class. Plugged my computer in to present. Bikini pictures everywhere of a girl that sat in the first row. FML. I still don't know who did that. And leaving laptops out, with the exception of situations like that, is normal and safe where I go to school. We're all weird. My boss was doing a big presentation for our corporate executives on the East Coast. Halfway through our graphic designer logs onto IM asking how the presentation is going. His username is, of course, Ratfika. Had something similar happen, except the video was of the dude presenting, jerking off whilst wearing the undergarments of a lady. I knew the kid in high school, and he was the stereotypical anti-gay jock who, working on becoming a cop, was in the Marine Corps Reserve, because the Army, Navy, Air Force were filled with F this, F that, pick fights in community speech, where this transpired, with the liberals. Anywho, he clicks play on the video, and steps out of the room to let the 2-minute intro video play. The video starts off with him talking to an Eric, name change, about how he wants him inside him, emotionally and physically. Then it pans down to homeboy wearing ladies' garments. Then he proceeds to take out his, incredibly small, like no more than 4 inches of full mast, dong and start jerking. By this time the whole class is in this weird haze of WTF is happening, this is totally happening. Homeboy steps back in for some reason, sees the video and sprints over to the podium and rips the VGA connection out of the laptop, throws the laptop against the wall in one fluid motion, then sprints out of the room. The class just sat there in stunned silence. Then the professor said, well, that is going to be a tough act to follow, but different student, you're up. P.S. I ran into the kid about 7 years after this happened. He is a totally different person. Came out, and is living with his partner of 5 years. Glad to see he is happy. I think the teacher should get some credit for being such a smooth operator. Last few days of chemistry class, and we had to give individual 10-minute presentations on something chemistry related. No doubt. In the lunch break between, my friends decide they want to smoke out in their car. I'd already finished my presentation, so I decide to join them. I go back to class, not knowing that one of those guys was up next. If it's not completely obvious that he's baked out of his mind, he makes it so by stopping mid-sentence every 2 minutes or so to stare longingly into the light of the projector, and then letting out a giggle after every observation. He aced the presentation. TLDR. Community college was awesome. Obviously his real report was about the chemical effects of pot on the brain. Back in high school Spanish class I had a friend named David. It was presentation day, and we had to give our presentation about any topic of your choice, as long as everything you said was in Spanish. It was David's turn to present, and he was the awkward kid in class that normally didn't say much, but he was crazy smart and was in all the AP math and science classes. He starts his presentation off well, but then starts to fumble his words a bit. His face starts to get bright red, and now because he is more nervous and embarrassed he screws up even more. One of the super popular girls starts laughing at him mid-presentation and he says back to her that she messed up a few words too, and that she doesn't have much room to talk. She gets that evil, mean, crazy B look on her face. You know the one, and she starts shouting at him kinda like, "Who the frick do you think you are? Do you know who I am? You aren't crap. You're nobody, and you're ugly yada yada more bitchy self-important girl balls from high school." David just shrinks up a little more with each word, his face getting even more red. Then she says it, the worst thing to say to a kid ever. She is still shouting and says, "Frick you. I think you should just go kill yourself." Do the world a favor. At this point the entire class goes dead silent. Everyone knows that a few years ago David did try and commit suicide after one of his parents had died. He turned the oven on and climbed inside. Luckily his sister caught him before he died. But now here is this girl saying that he should go die. She was expelled from school later, but David had to go back to therapy for a few years. TLDR. Friend David with history of attempted suicide gets yelled at mid-presentation by popular bitchy girl that tells him to go kill himself as a favor to the world. For a final project in some sort of 21st century media class, one kid's assignment was to report on how tattoos, or body art, are used by people in the 2000s to express themselves. Awesome balls. Anyways, the kid decides to do a demonstration of a tattoo application, so naturally, he shows up to the final presentation with a box of markers and a life-sized, naked blow-up doll, naturally. If you are new to the channel, you can subscribe. I publish new videos every day. Until then, check another video. Bye for now.